Welcome back to How to Run a Law Firm in 2025. In this episode, we are going to be diving into outsourcing, how we make the decision to outsource, what types of work we're outsourcing, including whether or not it's substantive legal work. So we have had a series of episodes now just talking about money and finances of running a law firm. So we're going to talk a little bit about once you get to that capacity, maybe where you don't have the time, maybe there are things you don't want to be doing within the business, or you've just got so much revenue that you need some help actually getting all the work done. What does outsourcing look like? And what are some of the things that you might consider to do it in a really smart and sustainable way? So I feel a little, what's the word I want to say?
Imposter syndrome.
Yes, I feel a little bit of an imposter talking about this particular topic because I don't do a lot of outsourcing. I like doing a lot of the parts of my business myself, and I keep my workload at a sustainable pace where I can do most of it. I have done a little bit though, so I will certainly talk about the toe dips that I've had into outsourcing and how that has worked out. But Mathew, I'll kick it to you first. Do you want to outsource? Are there things that you're looking to ultimately outsource that you don't have to deal with anymore? And what has been some of your considerations to getting to that point?
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. And one of the reasons that we decided to add it to our list of potential episodes is because I know you do have experience doing this. And for me, it's really all theoretical. And having been an employee at law firms before, which I also know you haven't really done.
No, I've never been an employee at a law firm. Oh, I take that back. When I was 16, I was an employee, but not as a lawyer. I was like an assistant. So not as a lawyer. I've never been like an associate.
Yeah. You're so ethical, Lauren. You have to be purely honest about all the comments here. No, I'm the same way. Yeah, and I will say I had this little bit of out of body experience because I do listen to a different practice, and the way that you introduced this episode, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm listening to an episode of a different practice.
It just
Which
means I gotta switch things up. I'm too robotic, I think.
no. It's just like that particular tone that you like the way that you did it. So, but to answer your questions, I am thinking about this all the time, right? I got the domain to legalextern.com because I wanted to start working with externs. Now, as it turns out, there is a lot of interest, in particular internationally, and from practicing attorneys who want to be your legal extern, or licensed attorneys, I should say, who are not finding work. And so it ended up being an administrative nightmare that I still don't have a legal extern. And that was a year ago almost that I wanted to launch that program. And in complying with the school's requirements. And I was getting all this inbound from other schools. And then there are schools in California where they're not accredited through the American Bar Association, right? They're accredited through California. And can I work with one of those schools? I'm not familiar with it. And it was just going to be for credit in the beginning, right? Because I want to see if it works before I'm think if I'm actually be able to generate more revenue and create more value for clients and get more business, absolutely I will do pay or credit, or pay and credit, depending on the school, right? So I've been thinking about it a lot, what would I give to this legal extern, this law student? And why a law student rather than an attorney or a freelance attorney or per diem attorney, depending on your jurisdiction, and or outsourcing other things to a marketing person or Fiverr or whatever. Well, the reason is I think law school does a terrible job of teaching us. It doesn't do any job of teaching us how to start our own law firms. That's why, or run them. That's why we could have this podcast series, right? So I want to train one, maybe two law students at a time on how I'm doing things from behind the scenes, see how the sausage is made, teach them how to do what I do so that I could start outsourcing certain things. And I will always have fresh and new ideas from folks who are not trapped by dogma and this is the way things have to be or the way they're always done, because they're law students. They don't know any of that yet, right? They don't have the constraints that longtime practitioners have. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to do that. And also to go back to the ethics of it all, I think about my Kantian ethics. If there's any philosophy folks listening, Kant was a philosopher. He had something called a categorical imperative. And it's if you do something, you impose on all other people that they should do the same thing. And he has some really interesting arguments around this about why you shouldn't lie, because then we can't trust anybody, society crumbles. And I'm not doing it justice. Ask Perplexity Pro to explain Kant's categorical imperative to you, and you'll get a great explanation. But And it doesn't really logically, it's not logically consistent in the long run. Like I'm more of a pragmatist than I am like a Kantian. So I still think about that though, like the categorical imperative of like, okay, so like I am like hiring somebody and what they're not going to like want to do it the way that I do it and like leave and go start their own practice. Like I'm just going to assume that nobody that I hire or work with is going to stick with me long term because just by my mere existence of doing things the way that I'm doing them, I'm at least encouraging that that's what they should do too. And so I'm not going to pretend that I'm hiring a lawyer full time that's going to take over my firm for me one day because they should frankly go start their own firm. And so that's why I'm just going to lean into that. And that's why I think the externship thing really matters. And because it's going to be so educational in my mind, it's going to easily comply with programs at schools that, have to have things, be a certain amount of education. And that was another thing I ran into. Like some schools wanted me to come in person and like do an hour, like a month, like in class. And I'm like, well, that's North Carolina and I'm in Illinois. Like I'm not flying out there to do that. I'm sorry. Like that's not going to work. So there's like backwards things. So anyway, going into 2025, because we record these in advance. We are in 2025 recording this though, finally. I think I'm just going to focus on Illinois schools because that are ABA accredited. I know the ABA accreditation rules. I know Illinois schools. I went to an Illinois law school, DePaul, so I could start there. And I'm going to try to just get an extern there. And so that's like where I've been thinking about outsourcing. But I know you actually at some point you were using contract attorneys to do stuff. So maybe you want to talk about, I mean, I'd also love some feedback, Lauren, on like my ideas too. So if you want to like give me some input and feedback, I'd appreciate that. And then I want to know how you've actually done it.
Yeah, I love your idea of externs. I love the idea of helping support and teach new lawyers who are not in the dogma yet, like who haven't gotten trapped in the machine. So I'm sitting here going, maybe I should do this. Maybe once again, let me steal another one of Mathew's ideas and implement it here in Colorado. So I'm going to marinate on that. But my experience with working with a contractor. So and I've talked about this on previous episodes, right? I did family law for a long time, got burnt out on it, had to figure out do I walk away from it completely? Do I find other ways to provide services that don't involve all the toxic nature of it? And so in that phase of trying to be creative and find solutions where I didn't have to be in court, I didn't have to be dealing with the super contentious, this case is just not going to settle, it has to go to court, where I could get the client to that point and then have a good handoff. Before I was just offering to refer them. And I just found that wasn't a great client experience. They kind of felt like, I hired you. I was hoping you would be with me to the end. Like, I get you don't like this work. I don't want to be in this work either. And it's my case, but I don't want to like start all over. And if the person I'm referring to doesn't work quite the same way, and, we've talked about it's a very small network of people who have the same mentality. If the three people I refer to are busy right now, they're out in the big blue ocean of trying to figure out an attorney that's going to work for them. So I just didn't love it. And so I partnered up with a fellow attorney here in Colorado who loves litigation. I love her, but I don't understand how she loves litigation, but she does. And she has a similar mindset. And so I went to her and said, hey, if I get these cases that I'm going to try really hard to settle, if they just don't settle for whatever reason, can I contract with you where for a flat fee, once again, right, you'll take it and we'll kind of pass the baton. I'll give you all of the information. We'll have a good transition. So from the client's perspective, there was just this sort of baton passing, but they didn't feel like they were left out in the cold and they had to restart with somebody. Like I was going to handle all of here's the case, here's the backstory, I'll do that. And so she did that with me for probably 12 to 18 months. Anytime I had a case that just was contested and needed a hearing, she would take it over and enter her limited appearance to do that. And so I would charge the client a flat fee for that. I would take a small percentage for kind of the transition and managing, and I would stay quote unquote on board so that if my co-counsel sort of needed anything, the contractor, I was there. Like I wasn't leaving anybody in the dark. And then I would ultimately pay 85 plus percentage of the cost the client paid to the contractor as just a 1099, right? I didn't withhold any taxes. She had her own business. She would work on her own schedule. It wasn't an employee relationship, but we did that for a handful of cases. And sometimes it worked out great. Sometimes the case still went sideways. And it just ended up being that Although I loved the person I was working with and she does amazing work, it got to the point of like, this is just a band-aid for me. Like, I just need to come to terms with, I don't want to do this work anymore. I just need to rip the band-aid off. But it was a good experience in having a contractor basically and kind of understanding where their responsibilities were, where I needed to step back. I think one of the big reasons I have such trouble outsourcing is I'm terrible at delegating. I am a control freak when it comes to my business. And I know not everyone's going to do it. No one's going to do it the way I would do it, but I just can't give that up. So it was a good exercise for me. And she did a phenomenal job and I would trust her with my own case. But that is, I think, can be a real challenge is in outsourcing is you have to hand over the reins to someone. So you really have to know who you're choosing and who you're trusting to do that, especially if it's in that really close knit where they're taking on your client work. You've really got to know that they're going to do, maybe not as good of a job as you would do, hopefully better, but they're going to be at least to your standards.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question I want to ask, and you can tell me if you don't want me to, if you want me
Okay.
to edit this part out.
Okay.
Did you actually have a contract with her?
I did actually have a contract.
Okay.
Are you proud of me? Yes.
So proud. So proud.
Yes.
Because you're an owner and you hired a contractor. You got to have an independent contractor agreement or a freelance lawyer contract or whatever you title it.
I did. Yep, absolutely. And I actually got that because I was doing contract work for kind of a big national firm that just didn't work out. I didn't like the way that they ran their business, and I won't say their name, but I had their contract that they gave me. And so I just went, this is helpful. And so I did that and just flipped that I was now the, employer or I guess company. And then I had a contractor, but yeah, it worked out really great. And yes, was really proud of myself for putting that in place.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like from a mechanics standpoint of it all, the client was still your firm client. And this other attorney was just doing work for your client, filing a limited appearance, but like under her license, but it was like your firm's client still. Did I have that right?
I believe so. Yes, because the client paid me. Yes. The client paid my firm, and then they understood. And there was in the engagement agreement, which was signed by all three of us. So myself, the contractor, and the client, it was very explicitly stated that the contractor was not an employee of my firm. She was working right under her own license. And here was the cost. And here was how the cost was going to be split. Like it had all of that in there. So the client had informed consent about what the relationship was.
Yeah, excellent. And like that's the whole point of this series, right? Is to talk about the minutia of doing things like that, because like you can't ignore those things. Like you have to do that. So that's great that like that's the way it was handled. And even if your jurisdiction doesn't require that type of informed consent, it's just good business practice. Like put yourself in the shoes of the client. Do you want some other random lawyer you've never met to start working on something when you thought you hired another person? I mean, or you hire a contractor and then you get Joe Schmo contractor that pulls up in a different truck because they're a subcontractor. Like, no, like you want to be informed about that stuff, regardless of if the ethics rules say we have to do it. Although many jurisdictions I know say that you have to do that. Yeah. I mean, that's great. I think that's a really cool experience. I did some contract work when I was just getting started through lawclerk.legal. And so that was all platform driven, and it was like tracking hours, and I hated it. I tried to find some project-based things, and I did do some project-based things. I was like, all the time I'm spending doing this, I might as well just be going out getting clients. And so that's what I did. And now like, and that was hard in the beginning because like you need the money, but at some point when you're running your own law firm, like you got to go get clients, and being being on the contract side is not good. It's going to pull you away from the business development work that you need to be doing. And of course, we talked about that in some of the early episodes about how we do that. Interestingly, at the time of recording, I'm actually exploring the opportunity of becoming an of-counsel attorney with a local real estate practice that lost an attorney who is going to be part of their succession plan. And they also own a title company. That is the title company that I primarily use when I'm on the sell side for a real estate transaction. So I've been working with them for years. I know the team. They're just going to send me some buy side deals to like do the buy side stuff that they don't have the bandwidth for. And so we are in the process of entering into a similar agreement that you had with them, Lauren, and with your contractor. And one of the interesting things, though, which I also consider, is the malpractice insurance of it all. Like, if I'm going to be of counsel in a contractor, like I said to him, I said, have your people, because he does have a small team, talk to your carrier and like notify them that I'm going to be doing work under your license, well, not, under his firm and under his policy. And the reason that we're doing that is because I require subscriptions for my clients to work with me. And the way that he structured his fees and his deals, it's all fixed fee, which is great for working together. But his fees are higher. And so we might as well split that fee that's higher than have his clients subscribe to my firm and it'd be a referral and I give him a kickback. So there's the mechanics of it all is just easier. It's all under his policy for his malpractice insurance coverage, with the idea that, hey, maybe one day I will take over, maybe not the law firm, but definitely the title company. Because like there's a really cool opportunity there to like take over a business that's been in business for almost 30 years. At that point, I'd acquire a team, though. I'd keep separate brands. Like I wouldn't merge. Like his law firm is separate from his title company. I'd try to maybe transfer his clients from his firm if he has existing clients. Because look, let's be real. A lot of firms don't have ongoing relationships. They've had relationships, but they don't like financially maintain them through a subscription model. So, but the title company, though, on the other hand, has tons of recurring business through other lawyers who bring business in, real estate agents, like that's got tons of recurring business. So anyway, that's all to be said that I will be experiencing this on the contractor side very soon as an outsourced attorney. Can't share that experience right now, but I will be happy to share it on a future, episode or collaboration. And that leads me to my other point, which is eventually, if we want to sell our law firms, and we should, right? Like we're building brands. The subscription model lends itself to the recurring revenue and being able to sell your practice for a lot more than just your last year's annual revenue times 1.5, which is what a lot of law firms will sell for. I'm going to have to hire, right? I'm going to have to outsource. I'm going to have to, and this is a sneak peek at our next episode about standard operating procedures. I'll have to have all those in place and not just up in my head or in a podcast episode. You have to have those in place. You have to have people following them. You have to have a team. And so I don't necessarily want to do that. I don't want to sell my law firm for the next 10, 20 years, like maybe in the next 20 to 30 years. So, in 10 years, I'm going to have to start thinking about hiring people, right? And that's the ultimate form of outsourcing because now they rely on you. Their livelihood depends on you, right? And so eventually I am thinking about outsourcing. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because if I'm going to sell my firm one day, just like I may be acquiring a title company, I need to have a team. Have you thought about selling your law firm one day, Lauren, and what it would mean to have to start to hire people to do that?
Yes, and the thought of hiring people sounds awful. So I almost would be like, I think I might just close the doors one day and say, thanks so much, I'm done. Which I know
you've got payroll set up though. So like you're running payroll. I'm not even running payroll yet.
I know. Yes, it could plug in. Yes, I've toyed back and forth with it because I know it's not the best business decision. I feel really proud of what I've built. And so the idea of just closing up the doors and sort of letting it, die on its own makes me a little bit sad. I would like the idea that it would live on. But I think for me, that has morphed a little bit more from my own practice into doing the coaching and just, sort of like the externship principle of teaching other lawyers. If I can systematize enough and have enough templates and go, here's my plug and play, here's my standard operating procedure, right? Plug this into your practice. I think that's where right now I'm investing to sort of have that eventual exit, is to have that kind of a little bit of a franchisee, but not quite a franchisee model, but being able to spread that way versus my own firm. Because hiring folks, no thanks. I don't know. It's just not for me.
Well, what I would recommend that folks do, and Lauren, maybe you too, is go through the exercise of like, if I hired somebody or if I had a legal extern, because for me, this is what I did. And part of the reason I did this is because, okay, if I'm actually going to bring on an extern, I have to have a task list of things for them to do. And I notified my malpractice provider because I was like, well, I might be bringing in an extern. Like, how does that, like, do I have to pay for like more? Like, how does that work for the coverage? And they wanted to know like what this person was going to be doing. because if it's not actual like substantive legal work, like and like specific to like they're not a licensed attorney, at least I got the impression that my rate was not going to go up because like it's short term, like they're not doing client work without my intervention, right? Like an associate attorney might do. They might have broad authority to just do the legal work for the client, and so at least it wasn't going to increase my rates. The rates go up every year. Like the longer so from a risk perspective, for those listening and haven't thought about this, the longer you've been practicing law, the more clients you've represented. So the likelihood of a malpractice claim, like statistically goes up. And so your insurance rates go up every year, even if you have a perfect record. Brutal. So anyway, are you interested? Like there's 26 things, but it goes fast. I could read my list that I made.
Yeah, no, I want to hear it because as you teased our next episode, I am not I'm going to have the imposter syndrome again. So I'm curious to hear, what are some of the tasks you've identified?
Yeah. So these are things that I would do if I had time to do them, but I don't because I'm getting the business and I'm doing the substantive client work, right? And I'm doing the podcast and other things, right? So these are all important things. But it's just they're always get bumped to the bottom of my task list. And so that's why they're on here. And so I guess I'm happy to make this more generic and also share it with anybody who reaches out on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, send me a direct message, like and comment at lawsubscribe.com. Rate and review this podcast, which I've never asked anybody to do, I don't think, in years of podcasting. And if I see that, I'll reach out with the list. Okay. You gotta incentivize people to do stuff.
You do. It's brilliant.
Okay. So under the category of substantive work and operations, create first draft of AI policies for fractional GC clients using 650 because they launched a new tool that does that, and just like make it like an added value. Like here's this thing, right? Research and refine conflict waivers, and then automate that finished product in Gavel. Research and refine engagement agreement amendments and automate finished product in Gavel. There's a few, I think, okay, no, those are the only 2 times the Gavel comes up, but like there's a lot I would automate in Gavel if I had somebody like on my team, right? And the reason is like my engagement agreement is publicly on my website, but from time to time, if I'm representing husband and wife or spouse and spouse, I will just I won't charge them another subscription. I'll do a conflicts waiver. Right. And so like there are certain situations where I'm amending my standard engagement agreement because as soon as a client signs up, that's the agreement they agree to versus having a custom one for every single client. Because in 9 out of 10 instances, probably even more, the standard engagement agreement is enough. Create a slightly like a more generic contract playbook that we can then adapt to fractional GC clients, because right now we're helping build custom contract playbooks for each client. So having like a starting place for that would be great. Refine my backup lawyer / designated representative plan, because as a true solo practitioner, like I have a very rough plan in place past guest of the show of Law Subscribed is who's also a licensed attorney in Illinois leveraging subscriptions is my backup lawyer. But like having like a more formal thing. Refine standard operating procedures, Lauren. So you're not the only imposter because like mine are like not super refined, and like all of these tasks I think would be super valuable as a law student to learn how to do. And they don't have to be perfect. They just have to start something because like that's like I don't even have time to start some of these things, right? Now it does say refine. So like I've done some of this. It's just I haven't like
You're further along than I am.
Right. Research implementation of entrepreneurship operating system methodology, like EOS.
Wow.
And refine time blocks and definitions for those time blocks. So that's only 8 things, and that's in like the substantive work and substantive operations of the law firm. And those are things like I'm not really doing, like that I wish I had time to do, but I don't, and I would be outsourcing that immediately. I mean, there's more, but like if you want the whole list, reach out. I also have proactive client work section. I have legal related research tasks to do. I have marketing, biz dev tasks. That's as equal long of a list as the substantive work list, because marketing and biz dev is like a really important skill to develop, right? And frankly, I'm probably going to outsource a lot of that in the future to AI agents, because we could maybe programmatically like set up agents to like, okay, here's this Excel spreadsheet from this networking event with everyone's name, business, and email. I want you to go do some basic research on perplexity. And if they hit, 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 of these categories, immediately try to schedule a follow-up one-on-one. Or if they're at a 2 or a 3, let me put human eyes on that. And if they're a 1, don't even show me that, right? So like something like that. I think very soon the tech will be able to do stuff like that. But until it can, I want to make an extern do that. Like, it's really important, like a thing to do, like to do follow-ups from in-person networking. We can't do cold outreach. So we have to follow up with people we meet in person. And then the last category is technology. And that is to demo some legal tech. In particular, I have on here a legal tech tool I've always wanted to use, but I've never had time to integrate. And that is LawDroid, Tom Martin's company. There's some really cool things it looks like you could do with that, but I'm profitable. I'm already leveraging a lot of tech. I feel like I could be more efficient if I was leveraging a tool like LawDroid on top of everything else I'm doing, but I just don't have time. So I would work with the extern on creating a strategy, have them, he has like something called LawDroid University. I'd suggest, I can't make them do anything, but I'd suggest they go and do that. So with that, that's like an actual thought out way that I would outsource to round out the episode here.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I heard threads of efficiency. How do you get more efficient in certain things? And a lot of how do you just make the client experience better? And putting in the time to create either foundational things or giving them extras or adding more to your resource library, right? Those are all fantastic things. And just like you, those are all on my list. And every day they just knock down and down and down. And I think that'd be so nice to do. But just thinking from that standpoint of just how to make the business better and getting that time investment, if you can't do it yourself, to have someone who would benefit too. I think a legal extern for sure, to really see, like you said, how the sausage is made and everybody benefits is such a great idea.
Yeah. Well, with that, stay tuned for our next episode of How to Run a Law Firm in 2025, where we're going to be talking about standard operating procedures.